Hello and welcome, those of you that are filing in here. Give it a couple minutes to allow others to join, and then we'll get started. Just to let those of you that are here now know, you're in listen only mode, so we cannot see, hear you. Again, we'll get started in just a couple minutes, so if you need to hydrate up, go grab a snack before we get started, now's the time to do it. While we wait, you can find the dashboard and there's a questions tab there. You can go ahead and let us know where you're joining in from. I know we usually get people all around the world. You can write your name and where are you joining us today or tonight, morning. We got Jamie in the UK, Christine in Denmark, San Francisco, Daniel in Berlin. We got James in New York. Nice. Got some Germany. Got Florida. Hi, Marla. All right. We got Joey in Florida. Here we go. We got Sweden. There we go. Denise in Ohio. Thank you all. Thank you all. Lovely to have you on board here. We got Jerry in North Carolina. A lot of people in Denmark. Argentina. All right, one. All right. It looks like we've kind of slowed down with our attendees. So it looks like you found the questions tab. If for any reason you have questions, please write them in there as we go along. We have Rodney Korn, our Director of Education, in the background, who will be fielding some of those questions and also bringing those to my attention as we go along. So thank you for joining us for our webinar here with Eleiko. Today, we will be discussing how to unlock the power of group resistance training. And before we get into this, as we normally do with our webinars, just to get an idea of who you are, what you do for work, Rodney is going to pop up the first poll. I can't see it, Rodney, if you have it up already. All right, and the first poll is just which of the following best represents you? Coach, personal trainer, athlete, fitness enthusiast, owner, operator. Looks like we have quite a bit of coaches and trainers on, which is perfect. A lot of this content is going to be very specific to you. However, if you are, looks like fitness enthusiasts, owner operators, athletes, you're going to get a lot out of this too. I appreciate that. And then the next question, just is this your first time joining us for a webinar? We always like to get new followers. If you are back for an additional webinar, thank you. We appreciate it. It looks like we're just about halfway, about 58%. This is your first strength talk, so thank you and welcome. We always like to have new attendees. All right, thank you, Rodney, there. So let's talk about our agenda today. We will be speaking to the science of group resistance training. Believe it or not, there is quite a bit there. And then we will go into the effective session design, so how we actually organize our group training sessions, followed by some tailored programming, how to be flexible with your programming, and then we'll finish with some questions and answers at the end. Pardon me. All right, so let's get into it. Lots of methods out there with group resistance training, right? And first off, what is group resistance training? And kind of the way we defined it is it's the combination of the principles of resistance training or strength training with the social and motivational aspects of group fitness setting. And that's what we're really going to dial in here with, like, the science of group resistance training is that social and motivational aspect that can be a huge positive when working with groups. So first off, if we think about group exercise, and I asked my family and my friends what they thought group exercise was, and this is kind of the main methods that were brought up, right? Boot camp, it's circuit training, it's this kind of group X look to it, or high intensity interval training, the workout of the day. All these methods of training popped up when asked that question. And if you kind of consider the art of cooking, right? If you're grabbing these ingredients, that doesn't necessarily make you a chef, right? The thoughtful combination and the preparation creates that remarkable meal. And same thing goes with strength and conditioning methods. These are all kind of methods as in ingredients, right? And they all play pivotal roles in group training. So the impact is really realized in how they are skillfully applied over time and how they are combined over time to really elicit the adaptations that we're seeking. So group training does not need to be this high octane affair of I'm crawling out of the gym every single time that I join one of these group training sessions, right? The real magic lies in seamlessly integrating the various methods into more of a cohesive training system. And that obviously aligns with the desired outcomes and all the ability levels that you'll have to adjust to. So principles come first, right? By grasping the core exercise science principles, you'll gain kind of the ability to wield or weld more of a variety of methods with more finesse and purpose, more logical thinking. Okay? I kind of think about a camera lens too here, right? So a camera requires a wide angle lens to capture a larger landscape. And adopting a more broader perspective in your training enables you to make more informed strategic decisions. So there's lots of methods out there, lots of more of a wider angle. If we make it more specific, and then we can dial in with that really for the desired outcome. So science, why group resistance training? Now, there's lots out there. Again, we're going to kind of dive into more of the social aspect of it, right? And really it comes down to the reduced feeling of isolation, right? So exercise can sometimes feel isolating, especially done alone. And a group setting provides more of a sense of belonging and connection, which can be particularly important for individuals who are either new to exercise or lack a strong support system, and even the people that just want to kind of break up the monotony of training alone sometimes. And there's a lot of research that suggests that exercising alone actually feels more strenuous and less enjoyable than training with others. There's no encouragement, there's no kind of external motivation pushing you more and more, right? It's just you and it's the work that needs to be done. And there is a time and place for that, where it is like focusing in on your internal drive. However, there's the general kind of the population that we typically work with. If we can reduce that feeling of isolation, okay, we're going to increase the motivation and build a community, really. Right? So the group environment and even other clients can, not always, assist the coach by offering that additional support. And even, you know, this feeling of if you're familiar with like the self-determination theory, right? Where these aspects of group resistance training, when you have some connection, this relatedness, right? When you feel part of the community, that's a big part of that internal drive, along with the autonomy and competency there too. I kind of like to think about this as, you know, rowing a boat. Rowing a boat alone can feel isolating, much like training solo. And whereas rowing a boat with a team, right, that resembles that group training. It's that collective effort. It's having some rhythm with the training session. It's being able to see other people, having some visual cues, some verbal encouragement, and also having a shared objective. And that's that relatedness that I was talking about with the self-determination theory. So it's actually using this theory and making it realistic in the exercise world, in the realistic world. We also have, you know, the leveraging of group dynamics from a physical standpoint. You know, however, the coach trainer, which many of you are, we must still cater to the individual needs and abilities, right? Not necessarily adapting this one size fits all approach like many of the group exercise training sessions will do. We need to adapt to the abilities. We need to monitor form and technique closely. So being able to move around the room, provide personalized feedback and adjustments. So when resistance training obviously has well-known physical benefits, and simply the group training can amplify it. It's understanding how these social factors influence training intensity, the effort that your clients are putting in, the consistency of all which really drive the adaptations. And the community aspect just reduces the dropout rate. So if you're one that's looking for some retention in your clientele, this might be a good approach to maybe make them aware about the benefits, the science of the group resistance training. So motivators, again, this might sound like a little bit of a broken record here, okay, but workouts can feel hard and good at the same time, or easy and unpleasant. And enjoying being with others while exercising, and having an exercise program that promotes accountability, these are the key personal motivator factors that are very likely when exercising in a small group setting. These are the factors that can combat reasons why people drop out of exercise programs. So looking at this with also no gender differences, this comes from some research as well, and the research is suggesting that, all right, group training taps into some powerful psychological motivators from this social facilitation, which is the tendency to perform better in the presence of others. There's the competition, where you can have some healthy rivalry, and that can push individuals to achieve more. You obviously have the social support, so the encouragement and support that comes in from other clientele in the groups. And obviously the accountability aspect, when the group members hold each other more responsible rather than just the coach. And that can have a big, likelihood, or reducing the likelihood of skipping workouts. And often these group training sessions, they have a schedule, right? And creatures of habit, us humans. So if we know what time the class is going on, and it's every Monday on same time on Monday, weekly basis, okay, we're going to be more likely to go there. Now, talking about barriers just briefly, I just want to kind of debunk some barriers here with the intimidation factor, right? When you're working out with others, maybe some people feel a little bit intimidated, whether they're coming in as a beginner or a new part of the group. However, that's very valid for more of these one size fits all approach, right? Like the boot camps, the high intensity interval training, where everyone is asked to do the same exercise at the same pace. However, when we take this individualized training in a small group setting, that can remove some of the barriers traditionally associated with that level of comfort that exists with that one size fits all training model. Also, keeping in mind that exercise programs that foster more of a positive and proactive attitude towards health tend to be more effective than those primarily focused on the appearance or self-image themes. So emphasizing social support are often linked to greater self-efficacy and really an internal drive than those self-image goals.
Hey, Patrick.
Yes.
Got a question for you from Lucas. He was talking about how a lot of the group style stuff that we're talking about kind of have that broad group approach, and they use modalities that focus keeping the train moving. But he said, how are we changing the perspective or the minds of these trainers that lack the focus on form and technique?
That's a great point, and we're going to be getting into some of these coaching implications on trying to have a process and system on what we can bring the focus in on. So if I'm understanding correctly, those that kind of play more into the social role versus the actual doing of the exercises, is that an accurate description of the question? Okay, yeah, and we're going to kind of get in on that on the organization process and having these communication skills and what to communicate during the pre-session and during session and post-session. So bear with me for a couple slides, Lucas, and if I still don't touch on it, let me know and we'll address it. Thank you. So getting into the coaching side of things, right? So this is really the questions that are necessary for creating that environment that helps enhance the members' perception, right? Perception's huge with any exercise, whether it's one-on-one or group training. It's that the feeling about themselves and the training experience, right? And the Eleiko coaching system, which is wrapped into all of our education, our suite of education, is really based on the principles of behavior change, because coaching is the ability to change someone's behavior. And the catalyst to this is the awareness piece, right? If you're able to progress from awareness to action to adjustment, that's when behavior change actually occurs. It's a journey and it's a cycle, and it's not just a single session that this occurs in. So we have to create connection, which is going to lead me into the following slide here, not to get ahead of myself, but coaching and leading is a process. Right? It's having a strategy for demonstrating your coaching intention daily and consistently, just like we're asking our clients to show up and perform consistently, right? And it's about managing and motivating people to reach their full physical and mental potential. So having a framework, having a coaching framework, and setting up the environment, coaches can establish a culture. I always like to think about our facilities as the third home for our clients, right? They have home, they have work home, and then we want to be their third home, that they just feel safe, right? And we're able to build relationships when we're feeling safe. So it's not just about the instruction on the coach's side, it's about connection. It's getting people to feel safe to provide input, feel safe for asking for help, feeling safe to take risk, and also feeling safe to fail and learn from it as well. So what we use in our coaching process are these three primary and interdependent actions, right? We have engage, equip, and empower. I'm not going to dive and spend a ton of time here. Just know that all of our coaching, or sorry, all of our education involves these. So if you want to dive a little bit further into those, we have those offerings available. Simply put, engage is ability to connect effectively, right? It's calling people by name, welcoming tone, a smile, eye contact. It makes the person feel like they're more than just another face in the crowd. Right? Equipping is what we do best, right? This is when we're providing that competency, where ability to kind of provide others with the tools that are needed to get to their goals. Okay? And then we have empower. Okay? And that's going to be the leading and the guiding others to be more confident and competent in what they do. That's our end goal. Again, using analogy, it's springtime, right? For most of us anyway. And the gardens are starting to come alive a little bit. And I kind of think about the coach as a gardener and the client kind of as the seedling, right? And a gardener who simply just throws seeds into the ground and expects them to grow will likely be disappointed. I've been there before, okay? But a gardener who carefully prepares the soil, provides the water, the sunlight, and nurtures the seedlings with intention is going to be far more likely to see a thriving garden. As simple as a coach, right? A coach who simply delivers workouts with the intention of building relationships without the intention of building relationships, will not see the same level of growth and success in their athletes as a coach who intentionally cultivates that trust and respect, that connects with their clients on a regular basis and a consistent basis. So how we communicate will influence how well we engage others. And this, again, goes back to the perception piece, where how we communicate can either be a positive or a negative perception for that client. Obviously, we're shooting for it to be positive, but these are the 5 coaching keys that go into engagement, equipping, and empowerment. Today, we're talking a little bit about the communication and the learning aspect, but we're really going to take a look at the organization process. But to talk about empowerment beforehand, right? Empowerment, we're looking for long-term empowerment, and that's the ultimate goal, really for our clients to become stronger and more confident. And this is going to involve encouraging a focus on personal development. It's building self-efficacy and a positive training environment. And this kind of goes to the achievement goal theory, where when we get our clients or athletes to focus on improving their personal best or their personal performance, then we can create that adaptive and empowering environment rather than focusing in on others, okay, or what the coach thinks is the best for them. Let's just focus on their personal performance. And empowerment is ultimately what coaching is about, right? It's the process of filling others with power where they feel confident and competent to be able to be successful even on their own. So organization. Okay. This is transitioning to the practical application here. Okay, so let's dive into a more foundational element of successful group resistance training. However, it seems simple, sometimes underestimated, right? So it underpins the entire participant experience, that perception piece that I've been speaking to, and ultimately impacts your results and the retention of the clientele. So as fitness professionals and enthusiast athletes, right, you know that a well-structured session isn't just about the exercises themselves. It's creating an environment where individuals feel that comfort, that motivation, and can effectively progress, really. So being organized is a vital component to establish that rapport and trust to be able to empower them. Right? Also, as we kind of define organization as precisely that, right? Placing things into an orderly structure that is functional and efficient for you and crucially for others, your clientele. So think about it. I've definitely been here where I've had a disorganized session, right? And that just breeds confusion, frustration on both coach and client. And that can really, compromise the experience itself. Participants might feel lost, unsure of what to do, or even feel like their time isn't being valued, right? So on the other side, a well-organized session fosters that confidence. It maximizes the training side. It enhances the overall experience. Right? A critical outcome of good organization, right, is that positive and supportive environment where participants feel comfortable and motivated. Right? This isn't just a happy byproduct. It's the direct result of the planning process. It's having a plan. When the session is flowing smoothly, when equipment is available, when there's communication that is clear, participants can just focus in on their workout and the connection with the group rather than feeling that stress and uncertainty. Okay, so some considerations. Your space and equipment, that's just fundamental, but this is, before the session even begins, have you considered the layout? Is there enough room for everyone to move safely? Is the necessarily equipment readily accessible and in good working order? Right? Things like that. Your population might differ with who you're training, right? Athletes may require more complex setups and specific equipment, while general population might benefit from simpler, more accessible arrangements, right? It's putting people in more socially acclimated environments, right? Group size obviously is going to dictate maybe how many coaches are needed. The equipment comes into play here as well. Okay? But also, larger groups are going to require more space, simply put, right? Session timing. How is your session structured in terms of time? Are there clear segments from a warm-up to the strength work, to conditioning, to a cool down? Right? Efficient transitions between the exercises in those blocks are key to maximizing the training time and keeping the energy levels high, right? Controlling rest and transition times. We're going to get into that a little bit more here. Okay. The way you communicate, that should just be kind of in bold, really, right? Clear and concise communication, essential for the well-organized session. This is going to include explaining exercises, what their purpose is, offering appropriate instruction and cues for those. And again, we're going to dive a little bit further into that as well. And then the big picture, right? What are you trying to accomplish? What is your program look like? What's the layout and flow of your actual environment in itself? And looking at how efficiently and effectively am I going to get my participants to navigate through these various components of the session? So let's move forward here and talk about the session flow and layout a little bit more, because that's what we're essentially we're saying is We're making a plan, we're having a plan for efficient flow and effective layout. Right? So the efficiency and the overall experience, that's going to be your client's perception again, right? And that's going to be directly linked to the time that you have invested in your organization. And I know the more that you do this, and what I'm trying to kind of get through today is having a framework and a structure that can be flexible but used over and over again, right? So once you have a system in place, okay, then it's just kind of adapting, adjusting depending upon goals and the ability level of your clients. And that's kind of the easier part from a coach's standpoint. But having that system is the tough ask initially. So I'm hoping I can provide you some details with that. So if you look at this from a pre-session, during session, post-session, let's kind of think about the organization and what we need to consider as coaches and trainers. So having a plan, right? It's not just knowing about what exercises you're going to do. It's about setting the stage up for success. So looking at equipment setup, communicating with other trainers. Hey, are you going to be using this, or can I use this during my session? And eliminating distractions around you. If we can, again, going back to your question, Lucas, if we can eliminate those distractions and have clear, concise communication of, okay, you have 5 minutes to get through this block, okay, and we're continuing to kind of press that on and kind of bring that up again, right? That kind of limits that talk. It's like, okay, we have to get to work here. Let's talk during water break, right? So kind of imagine your participants walking into more of a cluttered space, or you're scrambling for equipment, right? That immediately creates a negative impression and wastes valuable training time. So taking the time beforehand, ensure everything is in place, communicating with any co-coaches or other coaches that have other groups to ensure that everyone's on the same page, everyone's unified here. And then secondly, capturing participants' daily readiness. And we talk a lot about this in our webinars. For those of you, this is your first time, our readiness is, our daily readiness is just a series of questions trying to get an idea of how they're coming into us from a readiness standpoint. How stressed out are they before they show up, or as they show up to you, right? And this is a brief questionnaire, and it's just about how they're feeling physically, how did they sleep last night, what's their mood like, and what's their nutrition hydration like. And we can get an idea of how we're going to adjust our program strategy from there, or our training session strategy. If we have to make adjustments to not overflow their buckets of stress, right? Training is a stress. We want to make sure that we are giving them the appropriate amount depending upon how they're coming into us as their readiness level. Right? And then finally, in the pre-session phase, communicating the methods of flow and the outcomes of the session. I like to use a whiteboard approach here. Okay, just having it already laid out. Again, not scrambling to write this down as I am talking about it. Right, and this is setting the expectations as the coach and giving your participants more of a roadmap of the training session. And those of you, the participants that are coming back to you over and over again, and you're getting that retention, now they understand the flow to the workout. So it's kind of eliminating some unpredictability here. We're giving them something to understand how the training session is going to go, which kind of takes some stress off of them over time. Right? So moving to the during session phase, the mantra kind of shifts to adapt and deliver. Right? This is where we've made the plan. Now I need to remain flexible and responsive to the needs of the group in real time. You still need to have that individual touch, okay, that one-on-one communication, both on a professional and personal level. So in a group setting, it's taking a moment to connect with individuals, saying hello to everyone, using their names, giving eye contact, physical touch, like a fist bump or a handshake. Lots of short, like energetic exchange, touching everybody, okay, making sure that we're communicating with everybody. And then also with that, humor is a great way to get that engagement with people, right? Make people feel seen. And then post-session, we are looking really just to how we did by an assessment process, right? Assessing the plan, right? And this is your opportunity for continuous improvement. So asking yourself, did that go as I expected it to go? And then also getting some feedback to capture the overall perception of your participants. Was it effective? Was it valuable for them? Right. So remember that the time invested in each of these organization processes, right, really is going to translate to more efficient, enjoyable, and ultimately more effective training experience for your clients. Okay. I'm going to kind of speed up here. I realize I'm being lengthy with my words. I apologize. Okay. But this is kind of the flow. This kind of concept is getting more and more popular, okay, just from a layout standpoint. So you can pretty much segment your areas of your training, your blocks of training into areas of the room. So what are you doing in your block? What kind of movements does that look like? And then what equipment pieces are you're going to need, right? For preparation, you got your floor space, foam rollers, your bands or technique bars that people can use. Then you have your area 1. So this is kind of our layout and our training block. So it might not look exactly what you do, okay, but this is an example of how to lay this out. Light power, okay, we're going to be doing some jumps, throws, runs. So I'm going to need some suggested equipment like turf, plyo boxes, hurdles, cones, medicine balls that support these types of activities. And then you get into your area 2, where it can be some heavy implement power or some primary strength, where we need some racks and rigs, possibly some cable attachments, lifting platforms, barbells that support those heavier strength exercises in a specific area. Your secondary strength is, that area equipped with your dumbbells, your kettlebells, your benches, cables even, right? That just kind of have a dedicated space for exercises that help maintain the flow and prevents the congestion around the primary equipment, right? And you can kind of see how it's laid out more of like a tri-set or a circuit type. So we're allowing equipment to be available however way that you decide to set it up for your client in your space that you have. I hope that makes sense, and I hope I don't feel like I'm being rushed or rushing you on this. So please ask any questions. If you look at the logic chain, this is going to have more of a visual representation of the key elements to consider to create that effective tailored program for your clients. So looking at ability and goals, okay, this is always going to be the starting point of any one-on-one or group training session, right? What are the current fitness goals? What are their levels? What are they trying to achieve? And then that's going to lead into the training frequency, right? How often are they going to be seeing you? What do we need to consider from the training frequency side to reach their goals safely and effectively? This also might influenced by their lifestyle or their recovery capacity, the intensity of the workouts that you decide to have. And then the program template. This is going to be more about how we are providing this structure for your training session, that layout we spoke about, right? So do we have access to a fully equipped gym? Are you working with limited space or equipment? Are you outside, right? So an organization that is going to be based around the environment that you have, how many trainers that are working out at the same spot at your facility. And then the exercise complexity. So we always want the exercise complexity to match the overall ability and the daily ability of the clientele. And this is where you can make it individualized. It can be a set program for everybody. Now I just need to adapt to their needs or their ability. Okay, so we'll get into that in just a moment. And then finally, that's when you get kind of the X's and O's, right? It's the exercise selection, it's the volume and the intensity. How many sets, reps, how much rest time am I going to give them? Okay. Won't spend too much time on this. Just know that it is a guarantee that you're going to get multiple different goals in the group training session. So kind of having that in mind, you might want to consider having more of a total body training session for your for each of your sessions. One, you don't know how often they're going to be showing up, or they, you know, life happens and they skip out. So if I'm only doing upper body and they miss a day, then they miss a whole upper body day, right? Versus a total body, they're going to get something that can benefit them in even if they miss a training session. Right, and this is just general physical preparedness, which refers to the overall ability of the body to perform various physical tasks and activities. It's about being prepared mentally, physically for daily life, unexpected challenges, and even kind of forming that foundation for more specialized training if that's necessary. Again, not going to go too much into this. These are just the different elements of general physical preparedness that you can apply in each of your training sessions. When you're organizing your training complexity, right, this is going to be kind of having a system that can be repeatable, right? So if you're creating a training session template, start by developing a template for your own training sessions, outlining the key components such as the warm-up, such as the power development, such as the primary strength, secondary strength, work capacity, and recovery. Okay? So that's a training template. That can stay the same all throughout your program, right? Then you can build that scalable movement library, which really gives you that comprehensive library that can target different adaptations that you're seeking, right? Including variations of exercises for different abilities and for different adaptations. And then also consider what equipment that you have available in your environment. Then you can determine the exercise order in the complexity, right? So carefully selecting the order, considering factors of the stress readiness levels, that raw score, the fatigue that might occur after each of those exercises and those blocks. Okay? And then lastly, just implement, track, and adapt, right? Implement the training session, adjust it as accordingly, track your participants' progress, and celebrate those achievements too. And you can celebrate it as a group, which really is fun in itself. So this is just kind of an overview of what that kind of looks like as far as a complexity standpoint, looking at the fatigue and what's most important. And then having training themes. So again, you're going to have different goals and ability levels. So you can kind of set your training sessions up where there's an emphasis of the day, right? Our base day, there's an emphasis. We're still getting power development in, we're still getting strength in, but where we're going to spend the most of our time is going to be in that secondary strength block, right? Where it's more of a repeated efforts to train muscular endurance qualities and get foundational strength. Where builds, I can spend most of my time in that primary strength and I can just sprinkle in a little bit of power and conditioning there, but I'm going to spend most of my time there. So everyone is getting a little bit of everything, so they feel like they're being seen, that they feel like they're getting good quality workouts in, and then we can kind of, again, adjust accordingly depending upon the goal, time, frequency of training sessions, their daily demands, their raw score, and the list goes on. And this is kind of what the template looks like. So again, we're going back to that building a template. You can see now how that changes from day to day to day, but you're still getting in a little bit of everything during the training session. And this is what we call vertical integration. Okay, not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but it is getting all the qualities that we're looking for from a general physical preparedness standpoint in one training session, and then having it balanced out with a movement-based approach. So getting a balance of your lower body pushes and pulls, your upper body pushes and pulls. So I'm going to leave that, again, for you. We don't have a PDF of all these slides, but you can come back and see this again. It'll be on eleiko.com, which also you'll be able to find our exercise selection here at eleiko.com/education. That if you're looking for warm-ups, if you have certain equipment pieces that you're trying to implement, you can go to our exercise library, and find those. When we're talking about manipulating complexity, again, we want to manipulate the complexity to match the overall ability of the clientele. So this is a big part of our education system in all of our education courses, right? Where we're using equipment, position, and action, or EPA. And this helps create not only movement variability, but also it allows you to match the ability and complexity. And when we're able to do that, perception is boosted. There's that word again, perception of the client is boosted, right? It's a Goldilocks theory. We're not pushing too much past their ability, and they're also not getting bored from what we're giving them, right? We're meeting them where they are so that they can, over time, progress their goals. So you can look at different pieces of equipment. You can look at different positions from okay, what stance am I having them get in? The grips that they're using, where am I placing the equipment relative to the body? Overhead, at the chest, down low, okay? Along with the different actions, right? We have direction, distance, and depth, which we call our 3D movement or 3D motion, right? All different variations where we're not having to do the same thing over and over again, and we're also better able to match what how much challenge that we're providing for our clientele. All right, last slide here. Yeah. Really just to wrap this all into this, it's not just about the physical aspects of the exercise program, right? So think about how we can leverage that social need in the exercise programs. So using circuit training with stations to kind of format encourages that interaction and collaboration among your clientele. Trisets, maybe people feel like they want to work out with their spouse or their relatives or close friends, where they can work together to complete sets of 3 exercises before moving on to that next blocks. Partnered exercises, maybe we want to kind of promote teamwork and getting comfortable working with a partner in a larger group. You can have time blocks, and the list goes on, right? Having total body workouts is going to make sure that they're hitting every part of the body, so they're not worried about missing that, over that upper body day. Or in most cases, if you have that lower body day, there's participation is a little low that day from my experience. So just getting a clear message that we're going to be doing total body no matter what day it is, and you're going to get something that will help you achieve your goal. So much more to say there. I know I want to be respectful of your time, and just also have the option for some questions and answers at this point. Rodney, is there anything?
Yes, I have a question from Adam. He's looking for more key indicators that the group is feeling empowered and/or a sense of relatability through the experience provided. How would you measure or assess that?
Yeah, and that's actually post-session. I like to, obviously you're gauging, the energy of the room. You're gauging body language from your clientele. So if you're having a lot of laughter, if you're having, they're still getting to work, of course, right? But if there's that connection piece that we've been talking so much about, just from having a coach's eye standpoint, right? So more of subjective feedback there. Also at the end of the session, remember post session, we're trying to evaluate our overall effectiveness of the session. So actually just directly asking them, hey, how did you feel about today's training session? How did you like the energy in the room? What would you like more of? So just asking them more open-ended questions at the end of the session so you can, again, adjust accordingly. It's a cycle of behavior change that goes to us as coaches as well. I hope that answers your questions. Thank you for that question. Wonderful question.
Okay, we have from Samuel, given the total body structures, how do you adjust for people who train with different frequencies?
Great question. So yeah, great question. I wouldn't necessarily change a whole lot in my template. It's about seeing kind of their, again, going back to like their readiness level. How are they coming into us as to make the adjustment accordingly, right? So if someone's coming in and they're just like, they're beat up, they're sore, maybe they have a high like manual labor job, right? I need to make sure I'm just giving them enough of what they can handle, so I'm not actually pushing them, digging them further into the hole. So I'm not necessarily looking at it from what do I need to do to adjust the overall program based off of their frequency level. But if I'm getting someone kind of consistently, even to say 2 days a week, I can kind of have that same framework and then just adjust based off of their daily readiness levels.
And from Jimmy, what recommendations would y'all have in regard to proper loads for each member?
Say that one more time. Thank you for the question, Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy's looking for recommendations in regard to proper loads for each member. How would you recommend what loads each member uses?
Yeah, so I tend to like, there's many different ways you can do this. I like to either give reps in reserve or an RPE. So that's your rate of perceived exertion. So again, coming back to communications, giving the intent of the exercise. Hey, this is our primary strength block. I want to keep maybe 1 or 2 left in the tank, our reps in reserve, okay, for this. So pick the load accordingly, okay? Or if you're going for more hypertrophy or muscle gain, hey, I want you to be just about at failure at the end of this set, so pick a load accordingly. And we can adjust that load from set to set to set if necessary. But it's all about communication, giving them the purpose of the exercise and the rep set scheme can help them kind of self-correct and choose the load for them, for themselves, I should say. Great question.
Okay, and from Christy, any special considerations or insight for adolescent high school athletes, particularly mixed or co-ed groups?
Great question, and it's a loaded one, but thank you for that. Yeah, so if it's a mixed group, adolescent and maybe some like high school kids, athletes, one is just assuring the fundamentals are being covered, right? If you're working with younger kids, it's really just getting again, movement-based approach. So honing in on the fundamentals of being able to squat, being able to lunge, being able to hinge, push and pull, right? And starting them at a very, I don't want to say low level, but starting at the basics and then progressing to more complicated movements, increasing the complexity with the different positions that you're putting them in, with the equipment choices that you're doing. But it all starts at the fundamentals. And Rodney and I always talk about this, is I would much rather have people start with lower complexity and then be able to quickly move them along if needed, rather than starting at a higher complexity and then moving people down, regressing the movement. I think that kind of defeats the empowerment piece, right? So if we're able to start low, make sure that it fits your expectations as a coach, and they're achieving that, now we can slowly increase the complexity. So that's the importance of having that movement library, having kind of a standard for your audience or your clientele, and then being able to scale it one way or the other, starting with lower complexity for everybody, and then quickly or slowly moving them through that complexity scheme. So I like to have my standard, at least 3 modifications to make that easier, and then 3 modifications to make that harder or more complex for them. And now I can just, without having to think about it, go back to kind of that thought process in real time.
Excellent. All right, we have Anders who's asking, so we realize that people have various reasons for having an aversion towards resistance training. And we see that many trainers program basically all circuit training sessions.
Yeah.
Which means they're not really doing, quote, proper strength training, or doing a more strength or base, a more build or so form of training.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
How would you, or how do you disguise strength work for it to go down easier for these people?
Again, explaining the intent behind it, giving them, again, that reps in reserve, or the RPE that they should be at. And typically beginners don't really have an idea of what their perceived effort is there. So it does get easier to understand for the clientele the more that you're with them, the more that you're able to provide the information of, this is why we're doing it, this is what will occur from an adaptation standpoint when doing it like this. It's just giving them more information to kind of collect it, and then work to your desired outcome. It's a great point, and this kind of goes to the layout structure. Like, are you going to have them go through a circuit type? Now, that might not be superior, right, if you're going for the strength gains, versus having the tri-set, where I have a lower body exercise, an upper body exercise, and then kind of this, what we call a task exercise or a filler, whether that's some core stability work, or even bringing in some recovery strategies there if they need to. Working in that way so that you're getting the appropriate rest time to go back and hit the lower body, upper body, and recovery. So how we structure the actual block will kind of force them to rest if they're just want to, like, go through it as fast as it possibly can. Now we can bring that coaching instruction in, say, hey, slow down, take your time. We don't have to go as fast as possible through this. I want you to be able to, use that same weight that you started with, and maybe have one left in the tank at the end of each set.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, because I think this is a really valuable question. One of the things that we can do too is, even if it's in a circuit session, meaning you're going from one exercise to the next, there's a few ways that you can disguise it or sneak it in. Is you can have everyone, and this is going to be based on many, many variables that we haven't discussed, but knowing where each person's readiness for that particular day is, per se. But you can simply say, okay, this next round, depending on how many rounds of that circuit you're going to do, this next one, I want everyone to add 2 kilos or 3 kilos to what they're doing. And then what we do is, instead of going from one to the next one as fast as we can, we're going to do X amount of reps, then we're going to take a second, catch your breath, we're going to the next one. So you just do the exact same thing they're doing, but all you do is you just add, because you don't need to go from doing 10 repetitions to doing 2 repetitions to make it an increased load that the body's going to actually change or have an adaptation to. So we can make micro dosing, put microdosing into it where people start getting used to having variations. You could have 3 different sets with 3 different loads. You may have a lighter load, a heavier load, and a moderate load. There's different ways that you can base all that so you're sneaking it in, you're giving them what they need while still providing them with what they want, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rodney.
Okay, and then we have Christopher, who's asking what the sample training, with the sample training logbook, is the coach filling that out, or is the trainee filling this out during their session?
It can be either or. I like to provide as much autonomy as I possibly can. So if you're referring to this kind of log book, yeah, I like to provide as much autonomy as I can for that individual. So I'll just simply ask the clientele, do you want me to kind of keep track of this, or would you rather kind of fill this out yourself? And then I'll kind of use what they say to be, again, it's all about enhancing their perception. So if you have to do this, and they absolutely despise filling out their logbook, you know what, I'll do it for you. Or vice versa, if I will fill it out. I'm not going to let you adjust the numbers or anything. Okay, that it's all about the perception of the client. So I'm trying to meet them where they prefer. So you can do it either way. It's a great point, great suggestion, as well as even if they're in a partnered situation. So giving them options essentially on how they prefer to do it. Of course, I'm always kind of looking and making sure that they're following the instruction and the expectations that I set forward at that very beginning of the session, but kind of allowing some autonomy in the process too, because that's a big part of that internal motivation, that internal drive, is giving them a say in the process. If they feel like they have more of a say in the process, they're going to be more committed to the program.
Okay, all right, we have one. What is your approach to groups that already went from basic to advanced levels? Is it just a matter of play with the intensity or volume?
Yeah, I think that you can always progress, from if you start from basic and we're getting into more complexity, it goes back to those considerations of your organization. What space do you have? What equipment do you have? How many coaches do you have? You can do things that are complex. However, we want to make sure that it's done safely as well and efficiently. So I always like to kind of go back to the different training themes of what am I trying to accomplish here, okay? And I can kind of cycle through these, but progress them over time. This is just a sample to give you an idea of what the strength kind of block looks like, from endurance to relative strength to speed, but this is progressive as well. If you look at exercise selection, I'm looking at the EPA, equipment position action. What can I do to adjust my complexity using this process? This is going to be, again, off of their ability level and the desired outcome of the training session. I typically, my exercise library, I'll have exercises that will be more power-based, right? Where I'm able to position the body, position the equipment so I can quickly develop force and transfer force through the body, versus my more traditional strength training exercises, right? We're going to be more appropriate for my build day. So getting some equipment that I can load up appropriately, getting my body into the most biomechanically efficient where I'm able to lift the most weight. And for my base, I can position the body, position weights where I usually don't have them. Have weights up overhead where you don't have to worry about so much the load, but we're trying to create movement variability And that's going to help with avoiding asymmetries, excessive rigidity, and also overuse. If I'm just doing the same patterns over time with the weight in the same places, okay, that can potentially be harmful down the road.
Okay. And that looks like it's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for those questions. They're wonderful questions. We have additional references if you do want to dive into this a little bit more. A lot of it about kind of the social aspect and internal motivation, along with some group training resources as well. Okay. So to wrap it up, thank you all for joining us for another Eleiko webinar. We'll be having one next month as well, so be on the outlook on any of our social media pages, as well as you can go to eleiko.com/education to revisit today's webinar in a couple days. Right, so thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.